How to Write Most Anything in Blocks of 20 Minutes. A Gentle Guide for the Hesitant Author by Austin Kenefick, edited by Molly Kenefick. Hello there. My chat with you will be 39 minutes long. It will, of course, be about helping you to write when you are hesitant. But I think I should tell you up front that it includes some descriptions that may interest you especially. First, it includes a description of a 50-minute talk I had with Robert Frost alone when I was a senior in college. Second, based on my 70 years of writing, I have included 4 ways I have learned of getting unstuck when you think you can't go on. Finally, I have described 4 wonderful things that writing can do for you. Now let's get going. You know what you want to say, sort of, and that's great. It's important, but you still don't know how to start, let alone how to put your message or letter or report together. But that's okay. You set the alarm on your phone for 20 minutes. During those 20 minutes, you put down any thoughts, phrases, or words that you think might be pertinent to what you're trying to write, in no particular order, in no particular pattern. After 20 minutes, your alarm goes off and you take a break. You lean back and take a look at what you've written. It is, of course, a mess, a hodgepodge, a gallimaufry, a dog's meal, but that's okay. You refresh yourself. I have found that milk and chocolate chip cookies work wonders. Also, a bit of faith in the process and in yourself. After you have downed your last cookie, you roll up your sleeves to attack it once more, but again, only for another 20-minute chat. Scribble, scribble, scribble. But only thoughts, phrases, words, and sentences about what you want to say. Ring, 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 ring. Alarm goes off. Do you have a finished composition? Of course not. But as you sip on your milk and munch on your brownie, you notice the beginnings of some patterns, a few duplications. You keep the best, throw out the others. You spot a sentence or two that look like definite keepers. At this point, you may say to yourself, where is this going? This is where a tad of courage comes in, to keep pressing on when nothing looks finished, or perhaps even possible. You take a deep breath and you set your alarm one more time for 20 minutes. Scribble, scribble, scribble. Alarm goes off. This time, as you sip your tea and devour your crumpet, you notice more relationships. A sentence that sums it up and might serve as the opener. A couple of phrases that might belong in a section of their own. A possible closer. Whether you know it or not, you are cooking. Maybe you'll need another block or two before things start to gel. But trust me, your thoughts will gel. At this point, or soon after, you will be able to state clearly in one sentence what your letter or report or complaint is all about. And that's important. Doing so will lay out a path for your composition and limit it to one subject, which would be the base of your writing. You should also, at this point, have a number of scratches that are more than scratches. They are items that describe at various points that you wish to make, items that you can use to make a list. And lists are important. You may be tempted to skip this step, but if you do, you will have a good chance of forgetting something, and that something might be central to what you want to say. So write down every good item representing every good thought. Don't worry about organizing them. We'll come to that later. Lists help the big picture. The writer William Manchester had written 2 volumes of his magisterial 3-volume biography of William Churchill when he had a heart attack that made it impossible for him to write the 3rd. However, he had completed the research and had put his notes in chronological order in more than 40 school notebooks, each 50 pages long. Paul Reed, a newspaper writer, had covered reunions of Manchester and his World War II Marine buddies when they had gathered in West Palm Beach. So after studying Reed's writings, Manchester asked Reed to complete the trilogy, and Reed did, working from those notebooks. It took Reed 9 years, and the book, The Last Lion, is 1,000 pages long. Reading it is an adventure. Now, you may not be writing a 1,000-page tome, but this is an example, albeit an extreme one, of how lists can help. And the little picture. The big picture is above, but there's a little picture too. For 20 years, I have been keeping a diary of things that have taken my notice. I keep the diary in books that allot 7 lines for each day. Before I write in my diary, I jot down on scrap paper a list of occurrences that I think are worth preserving. These items might include the results of a doctor's appointment, or a visit from a grandchild, or the name of a book that I've begun to read, or perhaps some national event. Your list will be different from either Manchester's or mine, longer than mine, shorter than Manchester's. Now refine your list. Group similar items together. See any duplications? Keep the best. Toss the others. Do you spot a sentence that might summarize others? Keep it. Toss the others. This will make your list stronger and clearer and pave the way for your next step. And it's a big one, organizing. This is where you put your thoughts in the best order. But what is the best order? That depends on what you are doing, a memoir, an essay, an application, a description. Looking at your list may suggest a pattern you can use. There are many ways to organize, but you can do the job nicely if you only use one of these 3. 1. Tell the story as it occurred. This is the oldest pattern of them all. Prehistoric men probably used chronological order when they came back to their caves and told their families about the mammoth hunt. Write it point by point, just as it happened. 2. Start off with the main point. This is the reporter's standby, where you lead off with the most important part and follow with the details. You put the more important details toward the beginning, the least important toward the end. 3. Build to a conclusion. You first summarize the story in a general way and then organize your details so that they build in importance, with the most compelling detail, the one that hammers down the story's point at the end. The following pieces of writing illustrate those 3 types of organization. The first, in chronological order, is a description of a 50-minute interview I had with Robert Frost when I was a senior in college. The second, in the reporter's format, tells up front why I thought that the reporting and editing policies of the Washington Post were something special. The third, which builds to a conclusion, describes my apartment, my first apartment, and my mother's reaction to it. 1. Chronological order. It was 1954. I was a senior at Amherst College, and Robert Frost was there as a visiting professor. As you might guess, the college had given light duties to the 80-year-old poet. Give a talk or two to the college and talk informally with groups of students who were majoring in English. Plus, in the several weeks before graduation, Frost had also agreed to chat individually in his quarters with any senior who wanted to write. I was a senior and I wanted to write. So that's how Robert Frost talked with me in his quarters in Amherst, Mass. For 50 minutes, alone, at what is now known as the Inn on Bolton. What has stayed with me for years is not what he said, although I do remember much of that, but rather his kindness. When I told him that I wanted to be a reporter on a newspaper and that I was a little leery about it, he put me at my ease by telling me that he had once written for a newspaper, but that it hadn't worked out. He had been writing his stories in longhand until one day his editor called him into his office. The editor, according to Frost, said something like this: "Robert, we're running a newspaper here. We can't have our stories handwritten. They've got to be typed." And that's when America lost a promising newspaperman. He talked about his interest in botany and in science, and he listened to me. He asked how I was doing, and he encouraged me to stick to my goal of writing for a newspaper. He said he had stuck to his goal of writing poems despite obstacles. This included a time when he had been on his farm in Derry, New Hampshire. At that time, he liked to stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning writing his poems, but his cows were used to being milked at 6. So he started milking his cows a little later each morning until, some weeks later, he had those cows lined up and ready to be milked sharply at 10. As our meeting was drawing to a close, he asked me if I knew any of his poems by heart, and I did. If I would I say one for him? Now, I had always loved the last 4 lines of Two Tramps in Mud Time, and I knew them by heart. So the college senior gave a recital to Robert Frost. "Only when love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future's sakes." He listened. Then he held up his hand. "In the second line," he said, "the word play doesn't mean play. It means gamble. So the meaning of those 4 lines is, only when love and need are one, and the work is a gamble for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future's sakes." He wanted to be sure that besides knowing the poem by heart, I understood it. Picking up his signature Esterbrook fountain pen with the broad nib, he then wrote the stanza out for me, signing it on 3 lines: Robert Frost, for Austin Kenefick, Amherst, May 10th, 1954. Years later, I put that talk in perspective. On the surface, what Robert Frost did was ordinary, just to chat with someone. But how he did it was exceptional, because he did not just go through the motions. He did not just put on a pro forma display, fulfilling only the basics. He found out what interested me, then he tied that to his own experience. He knew that I would soon be starting out on my career, so he reached into his past and gave me 2 pictures of a struggling writer on the Daily American, a newspaper in Lawrence, Mass., and on a farm in Derry, New Hampshire. He just inscribed a book of his collected poems to my mother, to Helen Kenefick, from her son Austin, and Robert Frost. In other words, he gave me more than just his presence, his time, and his words. He gave me a blend of a welcoming manner, of empathy, and of a largeness of spirit that suggested he had all the time in the world to spend with an unknown college senior. Here he was, a 4-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry, turning himself inside out in graciousness so that I would feel relaxed enough to chat. All this extra attention he paid me, not only with the poem, but throughout our time together, was not a lesson in writing poetry or in writing anything else. To my dying day, I'll always believe that what he gave me was a lesson from his heart. 2. Starting with the main point. This example starts with a summary of the reporting and editing practices I witnessed in the Washington Post newsroom. Then I list those practices and end by telling how they affected me. The memory I cherish most from those days was not my bohemian life, nor the occasional light-hearted events, nor my first encounters with big city editors, but rather something I came to hold dear. It was the 1,000 impressions I gained in the Washington Post city room. First of all was the emphasis on precision, on knowing what you knew, and just as importantly, knowing what you didn't know. Not sure whether the man of the cloth was Catholic or Protestant, call him a cleric. When in doubt, be vague. Never fake it and hope for the best. The Post editors emphasized that there was always another side or several sides to a story, and that they all belonged in the story. This was especially true when the story involved conflict, such as a labor dispute or a zoning change. There was also the effort to make the language as well as the facts fair. This involved not only being sure of the details and including the views of other participants, but choosing language that would not prejudice viewers. Clarity was a big thing. Reporters were told to get to the point quickly and clearly. If this meant eschewing or avoiding a less common word, so be it. For most news stories, reporters gave the reader the gist of the story in the first paragraph. All of this added up to something. All of the effort to get the names right, to confine the story to what a reporter actually saw, to make attributions clear, to ferret out the other side, to insert explanations, to make sure sources knew what they were talking about, to turn oneself inside out to make the story clear. All of this impressed me deeply. Now, in my 91st year, I take pride in remembering how hard we all worked every day, day after day, simply to get it straight. 3, building to a conclusion. Now here's another story from my days on my first job. This piece is written in an entirely different type of organization. This organization is spatial, moving from room to room of my bare bones apartment. The body of the piece consists almost entirely of the piling up of details, all of which lead to the concluding sentence. I was 21, 5 months out of college, working at my first job as a copy boy at the Washington Post, and proud of being established in my first apartment, which was Spartan but complete. I was pleased at having found it because at $35 a week, it was within my meager means. It had a parlor, bedroom, bath, and study of sorts. It was on the ground floor of a 4-study townhouse off DuPont Circle in the district. The ground floor included a utility room and boiler room, as well as partitioned sections in the rear that served as the rest of my apartment. The boiler room also served as the apartment's parlor. It included a student study chair underneath a single light bulb suspended from the ceiling. The bulb lacked a shade. 4 feet to the left of the chair was an oil-burning furnace. Down a corridor from the chair and to the right was my bedroom, which had no door. Inside was a chest of drawers and a single bed. The bed consisted of a door to which 4 legs had been screwed. The mattress was a 3-inch thick pad of foam. Across the hall was an alcove, which was my study. It held a desk, which was a piece of plywood resting on 2 orange crates, a student lamp resting on the plywood, and a hard chair. At the end of the hallway, toward the rear, was a window which was crisscrossed by steel bars. To my mind, my new apartment was plenty big enough for me and my belongings, plus it was warm, lighted, and with the bars on the rear window, secure. After I had been on the job 6 months, my parents came down from Massachusetts to see how I was doing. I was standing in my parlor chatting with my father when I noticed my mother's absence. "Where's Mother?" I asked. "Oh, she's fine," he replied. "She's out standing on the sidewalk, crying." The right word is in the details. It was a large group of people, but what were they doing? Were they milling about or moping, holding up signs, shouting, breaking things, turning over cars, singing hymns, picnicking, gawking, waiting in line? Was the group a mob, a riot, a throng, a rally, a march? A riot, for example, is not a gathering, and a gathering is not necessarily a demonstration. Where feeling comes into play. For some descriptions, you can often find the right word by relying on your feelings and your imagination. My description of my talk with Robert Frost, for example, included my feeling that it had been a special event in my life. When you are writing a review, a commentary, or another opinion piece, you can rely, at least in part, on your emotions. Here are examples of observers who use not only their eyes, but also their feelings and their imaginations to catch both the appearance of a place or an event and its feel. Here is Arbit Blatus on Venice. "In the winter, Venice is like an abandoned theater. The play is finished, but the echoes remain." Now here is Clive Barnes in a review of Mildred Dunnock's portrayal of the mother in Days in the Trees, "as hard as the nails on a crucifix." Shanna Alexander on Dublin. "The graceful Georgian streets and squares, a series of steel engravings under a wet sky." Mary Bloom, protesting the replacement of Britain's bright red phone booths. "The Englishman's telephone box is his castle. Like the London taxi, it can be entered by a gentleman in a top hat. It protects the user's privacy, keeps him warm, and is large enough for a small cocktail party." And here is Pulitzer Prize winner James Agee's extraordinary description of how Buster Keaton, a silent film great, ran. "When he ran from a cop, his transitions from accelerating walk to easy dog trot to brisk canter to headlong gallop to flogged piston sprint were as distinct and as soberly in order as an automatic gear shift." The almost right word is a no-no. The right word is in general use. It is civilized and is seldom slang or jargon. It is neither pompous nor mean-spirited, nor a cheap shot, nor patronizing, nor crude. Caring writers take extra pains. The right word is factual and spelled right. Question: how do you know when your spelling and your facts are absolutely, positively correct? Answer: only after you have double-checked them. Don't assume, for example, that Smythe, S-M-Y-T-H-E, spells his name S-M-I-T-H, that Worcester is spelled W-O-O-S-T-E-R, that Anne, A-N-N-E, spells her name Anne, A-N-N, that because the residents of Paris are called Parisians, the residents of Nice, the Niçois, are called Niceans, or that the S in Harry S. Truman stands for something. It doesn't. It's a crazy world. Don't assume anything. How to dazzle with details. Make your story or composition as rich and concrete as you can with details instead of generalities. Readers remember details. Many details, well used, will give weight to your writing. The following letter, which is anonymous, purports to be the reply of a congressman to a constituent who had written the congressman to ask, "Where do you stand on whiskey?" Although the writer is a master of ambivalence, the details he offers for each argument give color and weight to each of his positions. Dear friend, I had not intended to discuss this controversial subject at this particular time. However, I want you to know that I do not shun a controversy. On the contrary, I will take a stand on any issue at any time, regardless how fraught with controversy it may be. You have asked me how I feel about whiskey. Here is how I stand on the question. If when you say whiskey, you mean the devil's brew, the poison scourge, the bloody monster that defiles innocence, dethrones reason, destroys the home, creates misery and poverty, takes the bread from the mouths of little children, if you mean the evil drink that topples the Christian man and women from the pinnacles of righteous, gracious living into the bottomless pit of degradation and despair, shame and helplessness and hopelessness, then certainly I am against it with all of my power. But if, when you say whiskey, you mean the oil of conversation, the philosophic wine, the ale that is consumed when good fellows get together, that puts a song in their hearts and laughter on their lips and the warm glow of contentment in their eyes, if you mean Christmas cheer, if you mean the stimulating drink that puts the spring in the old gentleman's step on a frosty morning, if you mean the drink that enables a man to magnify his joy and his happiness and to forget, if only for a little while, life's great tragedies, heartbreaks, and sorrows, if you mean that drink, the sale of which pours into our treasuries untold millions of dollars, which are used to provide tender care for our little crippled children, our blind, our deaf, our dumb, our pitiful aged and infirm, to build highways, hospitals, and schools, then certainly I am in favor of it. How to judge a first draft. If you have embarked on a composition of several hundred words or more, and guided by your notes have written it out, then you may be disheartened by what you see. Not to worry. Professional writers know that a messy first draft is simply one stage in the process. This knowledge isn't exactly a secret. However, many amateurs are unaware of it. You may have thought you could drop the middle steps and just go from rough idea to finished product. The process doesn't usually work that way. Good writing involves rewriting and rewriting. Your second draft will be less messy, more orderly, and most likely much clearer. So my message to you at this point is, don't lose heart. Keep the faith in the process and in yourself. Stuck? Here are 4 common ways that a writer can get stuck. 3 of them are easy to solve. The 4th is more complicated because it involves fear. Yet, that too can be helped. 1, you may not have enough facts or information to write on your subject. Solution: read up on your subject or go out and talk to someone who knows about it, then write. 2, you may be trying to edit as you write. Solution: give it up. It won't work. Write the thing all the way through. Only afterwards should you take out your blue pencil. Then write it again all the way through. Then edit. That's the only way. 3, you may be suffering from laziness or procrastination. Well, writing is hard work, and it's natural to put off what doesn't come easily. Fits of laziness or procrastination can last from a few hours to decades. So be forewarned. When your writing idea stares you in the face and you suddenly think you must repaint the cellar, accept that impulse for what it is. Solution: hitch up your belt, go back to your desk, and hit the line. Helpful hint: give that 20-minute tactic another try. It may surprise you. 4, and this is the tough one, you may be scared. You may be scared it won't be perfect, or that it won't reach a standard you may have set yourself. Or you may be scared it won't compare well to the writing of your peers. In short, you may be scared to fail. Aha! Welcome to the club. And yet, be grateful that you still want to excel. Solution: lower your standards and revise. Just sit down and write the best piece you can with the thoughts you have. Then slash away to make it better. Then rewrite. Your resulting piece may not be a thing of beauty, but trust me, it will be much better. Pointers of the pros. Revising with your ears? Who ever heard of such a thing? Well, actually, lots of people, most of them professional writers. What the pros know is that our great English language has natural rhythms consisting of accents and pauses. When you read your writing aloud, your ears and your brain will tell you 3 important things. They'll indicate when your writing is going smoothly, or conversely, they'll reveal when it's tangled up and should be taken apart and rewritten. They'll signal when there's a pause in your writing that should be punctuated, and they'll tell you where the heavy accents fall. More to the point, your ears will tell you whether or not the accents fall on the words you want to emphasize. Pauses. So when you read your composition aloud, whenever you detect a slight pause within a sentence, consider placing a comma at that pause. Whenever you detect something more than a minor pause, something akin to a change of direction, consider inserting a semicolon, or consider breaking that sentence at that pause into 2 sentences. Flow. Now read your paper aloud again, this time for flow. If you see a part that bogs down because it seems clunky, rewrite it. As Robert Graves and Alan Hodge wrote in The Reader Over Your Shoulder, the reader should feel that he is seated at ease in a taxi, not riding a temperamental horse through traffic. Emphasis. You can use emphasis in any piece of writing to stress a word or a point. Once you know how it's done, you can see how writers and orators have brought it into play through the ages, from Pericles in ancient Greece all the way down to officials and writers of our own era. By reading your words aloud, you will let your brain decide where the emphases fall and where you would like them to fall. Here's how to use it. Choose a word that you wish to emphasize and place it in a part of your sentence that is accented. This may sound complicated, but it's not. On March 4th, 1933, when the United States was in the Great Depression, when Americans were fearful that things would get worse, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt used this sentence in his inaugural speech to reassure the nation. Let me assert my firm belief the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Notice where the emphases fall in the last half of that sentence. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Emphasizing the last word. You can often make any word or sentence more emphatic by placing that word at the end of the sentence. Euripides, writing at about 450 BC, said, "To persevere, trusting in what hopes he has, is courage in a man. The coward despairs. Jane Austen's first sentence in Pride and Prejudice, written in 1813, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." Sir Winston Churchill, August 20th, 1940, addressing the House of Commons and the British nation. "Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty, and so bear ourselves that, if the British Empire and its Commonwealth lasts for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour." So after you've revised your paper many times, read your sentences aloud to find where your accents fall. Then place the words you want to emphasize under those accents. In that manner, like FDR and Pericles and Jane Austen and Winston Churchill, like hammers hitting nails, you will bring your meaning home. Now here are two writing quotations for inspiration. Jacques Barzun, historian and essayist. "Convince yourself that you are writing in clay, not marble, on paper, not eternal bronze. Let that first sentence be as stupid as it wishes. No one will rush out and print it as it stands. Just put it down and then another." Now here is Gloria Naylor, novelist. "It is a journey into the unknown, where often you're only conscious of, and what's only visible for you is, that step right in front of you. But you take it, and you hope, and when you look up, you've reached San Francisco." Writing offers 4 gifts. Writing can help you know precisely what once you knew only vaguely. The little girl was right when she said, "I never know what I think until I read what I write." 2, writing can be used for good or ill. You can use words to clarify misunderstandings, to promote projects you believe in, to urge your friends to settle their conflicts peacefully. 3, writing can bolster your courage. Every time you see a composition through to its end, you build your brain patterns and you strengthen your courage for the next time. 4, writing can be, well, just wonderful. If you use writing in a personal manner to clarify a confusion, to buck a person up, to give substance to a special memory, to recall the sterling qualities of a cherished person, that would be just wonderful. Bon voyage and good luck. Austin Kenefick.